Hi, I'm Megan Otto, Director of Campus Ministry.
That's your name, yeah. It's like the first time you've heard it.
Yeah, I've never heard it before.
Chad Jones. Chad Jones. This is Peeps of UUMC.
Peeps of UUMC!
So, there's been a couple episodes out now.
Yeah.
So the question is, are people stopping you on the street?
Yes.
They're like Megan Otto.
Definitely.
You're from that podcast.
Definitely. Those college students that hang around the church are stopping me on a daily basis.
Fangirling out?
Fangirling out. Wow, Megan, what a cool job you have hanging out with Chad and talking about nothing.
Signing receipts on Kirby Lane.
Signing receipts. It's a very exciting life that I lead. Mostly at HEB, which is where I spend all my time.
Here's a question. Yeah. I saw you sent me the video of the, what's the fellow's name?
His name's Chase.
Chase, that plays for your college kids. Mm-hmm. And I saw, I like him. He's a great musician.
Yeah.
And they're eating outside because of COVID, but it's a little chilly. They're all bundled up. Yeah. And he on the balcony there, and he's just playing his music. He was playing his music. It was like it's what I imagine being at like a like one of those open mic night where everybody was still chatting.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't mind that.
No, he doesn't. He does a lot of gigs all around Austin, kind of mostly further up north, and so he's used to gigging outside where people are, eating and drinking and being merry and having a time, and so I think he's very used to that. But as you saw in the video, the kids were singing along at parts of it as they were talking. So it's like, hey, chat, but also sing along.
And this is the hook. This is my jam. Yeah.
So they enjoyed Chase. They had a good time. He serenaded us with a whole string of love songs and random songs that he knows, and it was a really good time. So
awesome. We should have him on sometime.
We should. He would be an interesting person.
I've only met him the once.
Interesting. Yeah, he's a really great guy, and he has a lot of experience and is a great musician and just a great conversationalist. And, he'd be fun. I'd like that.
Not as fun as our upcoming guest.
No, not as fun. But, I feel like we need to address the elephant of the room that you know her better than most people do.
I'm not biased at all.
No, you're not biased at all. I'm glad that you admit that. She's my friend, too, so I feel like I'm kind of biased as well. So I feel bad about that.
Yeah.
But, if you're going to have a podcast, you should be able to choose your friends to be on there,
well,
right?
You know what? It's early on. And, low-hanging fruit.
That's true.
She had no choice but to do it.
No, she didn't. We suckered her into it, and she's going to join us today. It's very exciting. My friend, Ashley Prevost, here.
Yay, Ashley! Welcome.
I should feel like there's a drum.
Yeah.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we're so glad you're here.
On your podcast.
Our podcast about the peeps of the UUMC. Yeah, it's very nice.
Ashley is who introduced me.
Yes.
To the church.
Yeah.
She's graduated from UT. Mm-hmm. I was OU. Boomer Sooner.
Boo.
And when I would come down and visit, she would take me to church, and all the church, Chris and Dana and all of them, they were part of it. So what you met, how did you come to the church? Bill?
Actually through Lily.
Oh, okay.
So your best friend, Will Derrickson, went on a date with Lily, who was transferring to UT.
Small world.
Such a small
Will
world.
Derrickson, my roommate in college at OU.
Mm-hmm. They went to church together at the DFW area, and then she was transferring to UT the same time I was. And we met up at a party at her house, and a bunch of the people at the party were folks that she had met at UUMC. And I was like, oh man, I am looking for a thriving church community. So they invited me, and I came to a scripture over lunch that Bill used to do on Wednesdays.
What year was that?
I think 2005.
Okay. Wow.
Maybe even 2000. Yeah, it would have been 2005, like January of 2005. Yeah.
Because you transferred down. Ashley went to Madison for her first year. So you transferred down in 2000. That would have been
The fall of 2004 was my first year at UT.
at UT. Okay.
So then it was the spring of that same academic year that I started going to UMC. Yeah. And then got involved and
Never left.
And never left, basically. So and at this point, Bill has married us. He's baptized with our children. Yeah, our best friends are still people from UMC, scattered to the four winds now. But yeah.
That's really cool. And what is it about UMC that initially attracted you or was interesting to you as a college student?
Yeah, I think the proximity to campus.
Obviously.
Like
It's a
many
winner
students.
right there.
It's a relationship of convenience.
It is. It really
That's what they
is.
say about me and Ashley.
It's true.
It's a relationship of convenience.
Yes, it's true.
So I didn't have a car, and so that was great. I loved being able to just pop into like a church building, which isn't something that every church had. But honestly, I think it was more the authenticity of the people there, and the fact that I felt like UMC was a place where I could reconcile my faith and my like belief about progressive causes, basically. It was hard for me to reconcile like the teachings about Jesus in the Bible with some of the other stances that other churches took on like social issues.
Yeah.
And I felt like UMC was probably the first church that I had gone to. Believe it or not, there are not many progressive churches that I've experienced in the North Texas area.
Or you grew up in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And you like Catholic. That was like big Catholic population, yeah?
Yeah, my family was originally Catholic, but started going to a non-denominational, just like a Bible church when I was in elementary school. Then moved to Texas. Most of the churches around, I did go to a Methodist church in the DFW area, but that was not necessarily as progressive as UMC.
They're all non-denominational up there, aka Southern Baptist.
I mean, I don't think it was Southern Baptist in East Troy, Wisconsin, but maybe.
No, in North Dallas.
Oh, in North, yes,
Yeah.
like secretly funded by the Southern Baptist, yes. Yeah, so I really liked that those two pieces could coexist, and it didn't feel like, that there was any cognitive dissonance there.
I was actually thinking about this the other day. When do you think... So Ashley and I met in high school in North Dallas. And we met in theater class. And so I grew, suburban, middle class, wasn't exposed to a lot of the, issues, the social justice related issues that are kind of prevalent nowadays that we're exposed to, I'm more exposed to and more aware of. But when did you feel like what are you doing? You taking off your shoes there?
Jeez, just
like-
one at a time. Come on.
Just kick back here.
What kind of place is it? It's not like this is
Just
your
relax.
living room
You
or
want to get your
anything.
PJs on or something?
Wow. It's getting wild up in here.
Oh my gosh. No, but when did you... Because, I mean, in high school, all we ever... we talk about theater. We were theater kids. We were nerdy theater kids, and still kind of nerdy theater kids. But when did you start taking notice of a world outside your own?
I don't know. I feel like being in some of the classes I was in, and exposed to some of the people I was exposed to in high school, I feel like I had an awareness from like middle school on, I would say, of...
You did because you weren't super vocal though back then. Like I feel like you're more involved like post college, like college a little bit, but even more post college, and you've progressively gotten more involved in stuff. Ashley's disagreeing with me. Her face
says maybe not, Chad. Maybe not.
How can I answer this question without saying you're wrong? You're wrong.
That's not true, but like Chad likes to paint like, oh, we were nerdy theater kids. I was involved in like 5 or 6 different clubs.
No, well, you're like a French club, Student
council, French club. What else?
Other things, but
National Honor Society. So like that, like community service was always a part of those other groups that I belonged to. So, and I also, like I said, I went to church I went to Treach Memorial United Methodist in Flower Mound, and we volunteered a lot there. We like volunteered for food pantries. We went on mission trips, things like that. So I feel like that has always been a part of, you know, my consciousness. I do think that in college, you know, I learned a lot of the history that sadly isn't taught in, you know, some affluent suburban public schools. I majored in cultural anthropology and did a focus on race and urban studies, and like learned a lot of the different intentional systems that go into systemic racism in this country. And then obviously did Teach for America, which I feel like gave me an even stronger conviction in there just being totally disparate worlds that people live in.
Did you plan to become a teacher? Was that kind of your focus at that time?
No, not at all. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I'm in the first generation in my family that has gone to college, and so I didn't really know what to expect when I was like applying to colleges, and you know, sort of just did a liberal arts degree, not really having any context for like a pre-professional degree. And then throughout just taking classes that interested me in the liberal arts college, ended up in a lot of classes that sort of elucidated the systems that impact, you know, people's socioeconomic status. And came to the conclusion that education and disparities in education played a big role in, you know, continued segregation and different opportunities that people had. And at the same time, one of our friends, Will Derrickson, who introduced me to Lily, who introduced me to UMC, turns out Will Derrickson is a big factor in my life.
Some key points.
Turns out. He applied for and got in to Teach for America. And then I started looking into it more, and I was like, this sounds perfect. Like, I want to do something that I feel like will impact justice. It was right after Hurricane Katrina, so the organization was asking people that didn't have a big preference over where they went, like, if you want to just go where you'll do the most good, come to New Orleans. So I did.
And I followed you there.
That's
and
right.
I had no
like
idea.
a lost little puppy.
Exactly. Well, and it was actually New Orleans, I think, that it's just a little embarrassing because I went through college, and it was the same with Ashley, that I was exposed to history that wasn't taught in public schools in North Dallas or most places. But it wasn't until being exposed to that world, it was like a completely different world, that I was like, holy cow, there's just so much, outside of, suburban Dallas.
The limitations of your own experience.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Getting to see and appreciate the perspective of folks who have a totally different lived experience.
Yeah.
I have several friends that did Teach for America through various experiences of my life, and I was always shocked and amazed by the training that you had to go through in order to just be in it. It sounded exhausting and like never ending, and I just remember talking to a close friend of mine as she was going through that and thinking, why would you ever want to do that? That sounds terrible.
Yeah.
So I just wonder, like, as you are several years out of that, like, what do you think were the most profound things you learned about doing Teach for America?
I think it was just the ability to appreciate a different perspective from my own and understand that identity, the many different layers of identity, intersections of identity influence how you walk through the world and how you experience the world, how the world experiences and responds to you. So I think that was probably the most profound sort of learning. I think a deep appreciation for teachers and school leaders and what they do. Because even though the training for Teach for America is very intense, like, once you get into the job, like Teach for America teachers aren't different or segregated or put in any different schools than any other teacher, and it's just an incredibly difficult job. And so I think a big respect for not only those people that are working in schools, but also the complexity of the challenges that our public school systems face. Like, I think that was true back when I did Teach for America. It's even more true now, that there are just a lot of challenges that our schools face. So I think those are probably the biggest things. Like, I had students in New Orleans who were in 8th grade and did not have phonological awareness, like just had been passed from grade to grade. I had one particular student that conceived of the world as a snow globe. So I taught science, and so one of my standards that I was supposed to teach was layers of the earth, the core, crust, mantle, all those things. And in the course of that lesson, a student was like, "What do you mean the center of the earth? Like, we're in the center of the earth." And I was like, "No, we're not." So it was just fascinating to me, like how students could engage in an educational system and get to be like 13, 14, 15 and still have some wild misconceptions about the natural world.
Yeah, that's crazy. What was it like to live in New Orleans?
Oh my gosh, I loved living in New Orleans. Yes, it was an interesting time to be there because the population was still really depressed after the storm. Like, a lot of people hadn't come back.
How many years after Katrina were you there?
So Katrina was in August of 2005. We moved there in June of 2007, I think. So it was long enough after that, people were
starting to
people who had rebuilt, the initial waves of debris clearing and all that were over, but it was the first time that they had opened the schools on a mass level. There had been minimal schools open the year before, but this was the first time that they opened, like I said, at a large scale after the storm.
And infrastructure was still pretty rough. And I remember, you say debris was picked up, rubble was picked up, but there were still houses that were basically just condemned, waiting. They still had the X's on the the front.
Yeah, for sure. But New Orleans is a city unlike anywhere else in the United States that I've been. It has a very tropical feel. At any given time, walking down the street, you just hear music playing from somewhere, which I love.
I've actually never been to New Orleans. I've been to the airport.
We've been talking about trying to get a friend group.
That would be so fun.
Getting a house on St. Charles and then, going around all over.
I've been at the airport. There's not a lot of vegetarian options at the airport. That's what I can tell you.
There aren't.
I was there for a very short period of time and then I left. As you can see on my flight.
It's fun. It's
Although they've renovated the airport in the past couple years, the new MSY is very fancy.
One of my favorite memories from New Orleans was it was early on, and we were looking for churches to go to, and Ashley found a friend of hers recommended this church, and I don't know even what denomination it was.
It was Methodist.
It was the Methodist. Okay, so again, a lot of it was house churches, but this was in a church building. They had come back into a church building,
but the sanctuary was under construction, and so they were meeting in the equivalent of our library. And there were only 15, 20 people. And
it was in a circle.
It was in the round.
It was a church in the round.
It was very intimate.
And
I love it.
What you got to know about Ashley is she's not a great whisperer.
What? I am shocked by this.
So, we're sitting, and again, it's very intimate, and we're sitting around, and it comes to the end where they're doing kind of prayer concerns. And we're sitting there, and they're going around, and it's the typical stuff oh, so and so, lost their job, and they're trying to get back on their feet, and they're lots of detail, and the next person, oh, so and so was diagnosed with some cancer, and we need to get a meal train, and again, lots of detail, and oh, so and so is having trouble in their job and whatnot. And then there's this little old lady got to her, and she goes, dogs And then you could have heard a pin drop because everybody's waiting. What's
What about dogs?
And then
Good
Ashley,
Lord.
in her great whispering,
No.
like leaned over to me and goes, and I knew it was happening. Like I could
Like
see it.
slow motion
Yeah, I was like, she's
happening.
about, and so she goes, did she just say dog? And I tried to cut off. I was like, yep, let's go. Yeah.
I don't think I actually even got it out because I just tried to. I tried to be like, did she say? And Chad was like, nope, stop, nope.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh.
But then at that point, we're like stifling laughter in this circle of people
Who know each other. They're all very
all
close.
know each other and all act like it was not weird. They just said dogs.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a good prayer request.
I mean, it is a good prayer
I
request.
like dogs.
guess.
You like dogs? Wilhelmina is my
Fair.
friend.
It's just, it was juxtaposition to like the detail about
Yeah.
these people and,
Yeah.
and just
all
one word
dogs
prayer request,
everywhere
dogs.
Yeah.
in the world.
I love it. I love
Pray
it.
for the dogs.
So living in New Orleans was great. How long were you guys there?
we were only there for 2 years,
Okay.
which is the duration of the Teach for America commitment.
Yeah.
And then I worked for Teach for America, the nonprofit in DC. I was a recruiter for a while.
Okay.
We could have gone to New York or DC. Those
Okay.
were the two options.
Okay.
And the roommates we were living with, I was living with in New Orleans at the time, were going to DC. So
Okay.
I thought that would be fun.
Yeah. What was it like living in DC?
It was good. We loved the Smithsonian's. We loved the public transit.
Yeah.
What I didn't love about DC is it felt like everyone that you struck up a conversation with was just biding their time to see who you knew that was powerful and whether you were above or below the ladder than they were. Are you someone that would be beneficial for me to get to know, or are you not worth my time?
Everybody had somewhere to be. I think a lot, I've said this a lot too, that I think that we were only there a year and then we moved back to Austin to be closer to family in North Dallas, but not be in North Dallas. But I think Austin is a lot of, especially when we moved back, was like the perfect marriage. It was like if New Orleans and DC had a baby, because everybody in New Orleans was like, nobody got in a hurry for anything. It's like, I remember going to work on one lane street. You'd be driving down, and the guy in front of you would just stop his car because he saw his friend on the street, and he'd just chat with his friend. And there was no honking. Everybody was like, it just accepted this as a fact of life that, he's going to talk to his friend for a while we wait behind him. And there's some things that were endearing about that, but obviously it can get old when you're, running late for work.
Or I feel like I would try to get McDonald's or Subway on my 45-minute lunch break as a teacher. And there's no such thing as fast food.
Yeah.
I was guess I can never do this again.
Yeah.
Because I am going to be late.
But then DC was the opposite. Everybody had somewhere to be yesterday, and it was so fast.
Yeah.
And Austin, I think, has been a really...
It was really cool. We got to visit the White House. There was I forget what we went there for, but we got to see
the press briefing.
room.
We were sitting in the press briefing. That was cool.
Lots of people came and visited and saw the sights in DC, which is cool.
Yeah.
So we came back...
In what year?
2010.
Okay.
10.
Okay.
Same year we got married. Mm-hmm. And then it was just a natural progression to kind of come back to the church. Mm-hmm. Bill was still here at that time, right?
Yeah.
When did Bill leave?
2014.
2014. Yeah. Okay. So we as a couple years with Bill.
Yeah, but Bill was primarily campus. He also did young adult, but there just wasn't I think there were several attempts to get some young adult stuff going on that nothing ever really took off that I can remember.
Yeah.
I forget what the group was called, but it was a bunch of us that were we've graduated from college, we don't have kids yet, we don't fit in any other ministry category.
The folks in the middle. Yeah, I know about those. Yeah. Ashley, what would you say would be your God thread throughout your life at this point? So, you are you grew up in the church, you go to UMC. As a college student, you're kind of exposed to a lot more social justice issues at this church. You go to New Orleans, you go to DC, you come back to Austin. What would you say is this thread of your faith that you continue to experience, come back to, kind of understand about the place of God in your life?
I don't know. I think it is sort of the humanist element where it's like everyone on the planet is somebody that God intimately knows and loves and is worthy of our love and dignity.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah, so I think that is the main, and I think a moral life.
Yeah.
Like, I know we talked about the social justice aspect of UMC that first attracted me, as a college student, and of course has been something that keeps us at the church over time. But I think that too is like the thread, is I am very justice oriented, and I feel like the way that my faith has manifested throughout my life is the pursuit of a moral life.
Yeah.
So that was a natural progression then for you to join the racial justice group when Kristen left.
Yeah, I have always been really interested in that kind of work, but while I worked on a campus in Austin, I worked at KIPP for a really long time. I didn't have much capacity in my life to do more than what I was doing as a campus administrator. And so when I transitioned to the job I currently have at the TEA, I had a little bit more space to join stuff like that. Contacted Kristen about joining, and then joined in shortly before, I guess at the end of 2020.
Okay. Good.
I feel like I want to acknowledge and apologize to our moms that are listening.
Yeah.
That
your mom and
my mom.
Right? Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
That's it. That's our two listeners.
Yep, exactly.
They're jackhammering. They decided to just now. It's been quiet all day, and they've decided to start jackhammering in the
So
middle
if
of
you
the
hear
street.
jackhammering in the background, it is not because we don't love Ashley, and not because we're not excited about this episode, but just the way that things are on this street.
It happens.
Yeah.
So
for Pam and Melinda.
Pam and
we're
Melinda.
sorry.
That's what's
We're sorry
going on.
about it.
Yeah.
So the racial justice group, you are involved in that, and we're doing something for Lent this year. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we're doing another Lenten study. This is a study that some members of our racial justice group, David and Nancy Mossman, recommended. It's a study by the Christian Century that people are going to have an opportunity to read different stimulus and then come together and have candid conversations about what it means to be anti-racist and what our Christian imperative is for that.
Absolutely, that's great.
Exciting.
And how do people get involved in that?
There are a couple different committees that we've broken the group into. The Education Committee, the Advocacy Committee, and the Church Practices Committee. And even though we do have those three committees, the last several meetings we've just been meeting as one large group, and then different folks that are interested in different things will take action items for those different areas. But education is mostly about folks that want to deepen their own understanding of their racial identity and how race impacts social dynamics in the United States, sort of the history of systemic racism and how it continues to impact our lives to this day. It's that idea that we are not living in a post-racial society, and we, as people that want to be anti-racist, need to take conscious steps to undo the systems of the past that have led to where we are today. Advocacy is primarily led by Tom Downing, who is the co-leader of the racial justice group with me. And that is just making sure that our church members stay aware of the different ways that we can advocate for causes that are important to people of color who are leading other grassroots organizing groups around the city. It's really important to us that we don't step into this space thinking we know what the issues are, know what the solutions are, but rather that we take the lead from people of color who are already doing this organizing, so that we know that we are just amplifying those efforts as opposed to imposing our will somewhere where we shouldn't.
Yeah.
And then church practices to make sure that we are making decisions for our own practices that make our space welcoming to people of color, and that align with our beliefs around being anti-racist.
Right.
Yeah.
Tighten
So
that
if people
up.
are interested, they
I feel like when you like Oscar music to start.
So, and for folks to be involved in this study, is it during Sunday school? Is that right? On Sunday mornings, or is that?
The Lenten study, actually, we typically do it where there are several different leaders, and folks
Okay.
can opt in to like the day and
Yeah.
time that works
But-
best for them.
Yeah.
They can also reach out to you or Tom if you just want to.
Yeah, so just
Yeah.
general interested in becoming involved
Yeah.
in the group. We meet on the fourth Friday of the month, once a month. If there are times where we need to discuss something in a more urgent timeline, we'll do one-off meetings. But typically we do our 90-minute meeting per month, and then with the Lenten study, we'll offer probably one at the Sunday school hour, as well as other days and times throughout the week so that people can find one that works with their schedule.
So my grandma Marilyn always said whenever I would move to a new city, she's like, Megan, go join a church and you will have friends.
Yeah.
Like every single time I moved to new, and I did that a lot for a while. And so it's so interesting to me that that has been kind of this thread throughout your life.
Yeah,
you
for sure.
came to the church in college and you met these friends that Chad knew and that you knew that have continued to be your friends even to now, and you have continued to make friends even with the crazy dog lady. I mean,
Sounds good.
she was probably a friend. No, probably
That was the one and only
She's
time
the
we saw.
exception, I think.
Good to go. Anyway, the point is that I think that's something that is really powerful, I think, for folks in our age range and for my parents' age and for people even older than that. I think
Yeah.
that we come to church and we find our chosen family, chosen friends, and people that really
Absolutely.
become an important part of our life. And that's what I love about UMC. I've met so many people and have made friendships with people that I would never have met otherwise, that are a lot older than me, a lot younger than me, and that we have a common interest in social justice and in religion, and I think that's such a cool story that you have told us today. I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, it's such a great community.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, thank you for saying yes to this.
Ashley, thank
we
you
know
for
you have
hanging out
a
with
meeting
us.
you got to run to.
With your
so
shoes off
you're the
and
best.
the jackhammer going,
Yeah.
you are a trooper. We have enjoyed spending time with you. The end.
We'll see you next week.
Okay, bye. Yeah.
Enter PJs.
Enter PJs.
These aren't really PJs.
Did you go to bed in them last night?
Chad.
Thanks.
Baggage pass on the podcast.
Work from home. I never leave my living room.
Dangerous. Dangerous. Baggage pass on the podcast.